A question that comes to us is on this subject of human experience. You have heard me say that there is no God in the human scene. If there were, the human scene would be spiritual, eternal, immortal, sinless, deathless, diseaseless, ageless. That which constitutes a human universe is a selfhood that is cut off from God, the branch that withereth. That's what constitutes the human race. That is why the human race lives by bread alone. That is, it lives by external forms of life. It earns its living by the sweat of its brow, brings forth its children in labor, and goes through its 80 years and 10, 20, or 30 in more or less misery. Now that wouldn't be, and actually it isn't true of sons of God. Those who have attained their spiritual contact with God know very little of the sins, diseases, tortures, lack and limitation of human life. Those who have attained even a slight measure of Christhood, of spiritual realization, are in the world but not of it. They are untouched by its tragedies in a personal way. They know that they exist, and because of their contact, they can help others to come through them. They can feed the multitudes, they can heal the multitudes in some measure, they can comfort those who mourn. But they themselves do not require the help of others. They themselves do not require supply or comforting or any of these human things that the human race finds so necessary. The reason is that on the first contact with God, a sort of relationship is established, described by the Master in the 15th chapter of John. We are one with the Christ, and Christ is one with God. Therefore, we are always divinely fed, sustained, upheld. We, as the branch, have no life of our own. We are drawing the life from the earth up through the vine out into the branch. We, as individuals who have contact with this inner presence that we call the Christ, which in its turn is really one with the whole universal Godhood, we are spiritually maintained, spiritually fed, spiritually protected, spiritually companioned. With or without human companionship makes no difference. You can enjoy human companionship, but you can live without it, because there is an inner companioning. Now, on this human plane, we exist as states and stages of consciousness. We have, for instance, if we go back in Scripture, we have the Hebrews as slaves under the Pharaohs, with hardly enough to eat, certainly not enough housing, no education, no culture, no religion. About as ignorant, illiterate, and barbaric as humans can be. Later on, you find the African Negro, even when transplanted to the United States, in that same uneducated, uncultured, untutored, savage state. the Aborigines of Australia. As you watch the unfolding of the human picture, you will see an ascending state of consciousness, even within the one generation, all the way up to those who are the most cultured, the most educated, the most refined, the most civilized. And through this, you learn that mankind is a state of unfolding consciousness, coming up from the lowest to the highest, but always human. Always human, always a branch that withereth. It makes no difference, your college professor withers too. All withereth because they're living by human modes and means, by bread alone. It is only as an individual attains this inner contact that they become the sons of God. Then that could happen on any of those levels of consciousness and wipe out what we would call the human estate. In other words, anybody, it makes no difference what their color or race or creed, makes no difference if they're in slavery or not. The very moment that they attain spiritual contact, they are freed of their humanhood. All in proportion to the degree of their spiritual contact. A person that makes an occasional contact has, in some measure, attained their freedom from humanhood. But the person who knows enough to go into their inner communion and meditation day by day and renew it, even as the Master went away for 40 days at a time, in order to live in that inner renewal, those individuals find the supreme freedom, even the freedom that would permit them to die and rise up again. There's no limitation to the accomplishment of an individual who has attained God contact. None. To an individual who has made his God contact. Why? Because the individual isn't doing it. The Spirit of God in man is doing it. Not the man and not the woman. The Spirit of God in man. It can do all things, but it can do it only in proportion to our contact. And so you will see that all of these humans who are on earth, some of them living absolute lives of nothingness, like the slaves of which I spoke in all these ages, even slaves at the present time in many parts of the world, absolutely useless lives, except as through this gradual unfoldment we come to a place where we are in this room, and others like us, ready to say, I'm tired of living by bread alone. I want to learn how to live by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. I'm tired of being smart in my own right or strong in my own right. I want to live through the Christ which strengtheneth me. I want to get to the place where I no longer live, where Christ liveth my life. That's why we are gathered here. This is not so much a teaching as a God experience. I don't believe that there's a need in the world for any more teachings. I think there are quite a few too many already. No one is going anywhere through teachings. I can tell you that, any teaching. A teaching, unless it can lead you to the experience, is going to leave you in the realm of the mind. And the realm of the mind is only a degree, whether it's a little higher educated or lower educated, a little more or a little less. But the spirit that you contact through the experience of Christ consciousness that changes your entire life and makes you an immortal being. It makes you the Son of God, heir of God, joint heir. No, it has to be someone with a spiritual vision. And anyone can have that spiritual vision whose devotion to God and to the things of God is sufficiently intense. How great is our devotion? And that tells what the degree of our attainment will be. Anybody can have enough devotion to go out and demonstrate their supply and a moderate amount of comfort. But it takes a deep devotion to be able to rise above humanhood, even good humanhood, and to help others to rise in that same direction.